You can almost feel the tension. This is what everyone's waiting for. Mouth-watering clash. Chasing number 25 is Novak Djokovic.
Jannik!
And he's up against Jannik Sinner. And look around here in Wimbledon. It's baking hot. Atmosphere electrifying. We've just had a local boy going out, Zverev in the final. But this is what everyone's come out here to see. The old dog against the youngster. Behind me are the two champions. And as I speak in SW19, it's just about to be toss time. In the blue corner, there's Novak, the old dog. In the red corner is going to be Jannik Sinner. As we come up to toss time, the ref is going to spin it up. And let's see very quickly who's going to serve first. Enjoy. Time for a Pims.
39 years old, calf strapped, tank running on fumes, and somehow still standing on center court. That is the image Novak Djokovic leaves behind after Wimbledon 2026, and it is the image that made Friday's semifinal against Jannik Sinner feel like the most loaded question in tennis. Could a man who had spent an entire fortnight running on empty find one more miracle against the best server on the planet? Or was this always going to be the day the clock finally caught up with him? To understand why this match carried so much weight, you have to rewind through the 3 matches that got Djokovic here, because none of them were clean. Against Arthur Rinderknecht in the 3rd round, Djokovic looked like a champion cruising toward an easy afternoon, only to hit a wall out of nowhere. He dropped the 3rd set 6-1, barely dragging himself through a 4th set that threatened to slip away entirely. He hung on just long enough to force a tiebreak, and then delivered what he himself called a nearly perfect sequence to escape with the set, and eventually the match. It was the first sign that something wasn't right physically, even if nobody wanted to say it out loud yet. Then came the quarterfinal against Felix Auger-Aliassime, and this was where the alarm bells got impossible to ignore. The 25-year-old Canadian, seeded 3rd at this year's tournament, should have taken the first set. He led it, controlled it, and somehow let it slip away in a brutal tiebreak that swung 12-10 the wrong way for him. From there, Auger-Aliassime kept manufacturing chances and kept failing to close them out, while Djokovic, visibly hampered, took a medical timeout on his left calf as early as the first set. Whether that treatment was genuine necessity or a veteran's gamesmanship, only Djokovic knows for certain. What isn't in doubt is what followed. 5 hours and 15 minutes of tennis, the longest quarterfinal in Wimbledon history, ending with Djokovic somehow still upright and somehow still moving on. Surviving a match that long doesn't erase the fatigue that got him there in the first place. If anything, it just meant he was walking into a semifinal against the most informed player in the sport with 3 fewer days of recovery than his body actually needed. That set up Friday's collision with Sinner, a matchup that had been building for years and had already delivered fireworks in Melbourne back in January, where Djokovic pulled off a rare win over the Italian. This time, though, the roles reversed almost immediately. Sinner opened with a serving clinic that never let up, dropping only a handful of points on his own delivery through the first 2 sets combined. Djokovic, for all his legendary return game, one of the greatest the sport has ever produced, simply could not find a crack. He didn't force his first break point of the entire match until deep into the 3rd set, roughly 2.5 hours in, and by then the outcome had long felt inevitable. Sinner controlled the rhythm from the opening game, breaking late in the first set, breaking through the middle of the second, and breaking early in the 3rd, a methodical, suffocating pattern that gave Djokovic no room to find his usual rhythm of grinding an opponent down over 4 or 5 sets. There was no 5th set epic this time, no tie-break heroics, no last-gasp escape act. Sinner closed it out 6-4, 6-4, 6-4 in a performance defined by pinpoint serving, aggressive returns, and total command of the baseline exchanges. He finished the match having faced almost no pressure on his own serve throughout, a statistic that says everything about how one-sided this encounter really was once it got going. For Djokovic, the numbers tell a hard truth. It marks the second straight year Sinner has eliminated him in a Wimbledon semifinal, and the sixth time out of their last 7 meetings that the Italian has come out on top. The age gap between them, roughly 15 years, has rarely looked more visible than it did across those 2 hours and 20 minutes on Friday. And yet, even in defeat, there is something almost defiant about how Djokovic got to this stage at all. 3 days removed from the longest quarterfinal in the tournament's history, carrying a calf issue that clearly limited his movement, he still walked out and competed at the Final Four of the one tournament that means more to him than almost any other. So does this mark the beginning of the end for Djokovic at the All England Club? He has stood on this court every year for nearly a decade at this stage of the tournament, extending his own record for consecutive Wimbledon semifinal appearances into territory no other man in the modern era has touched. But records built on longevity eventually collide with the physical reality of competing against players half his age with fresher legs and fewer miles in their bodies. Sinner, at 24, now moves on to face Alexander Zverev in Sunday's final, chasing a second consecutive Wimbledon title and extending a remarkable head-to-head advantage over the German that has stretched to 9 straight wins. For Djokovic, the questions now shift to what comes next. Does the body allow for one more run at a 25th Grand Slam title? Does the desire remain as fierce as it clearly still is? Given how hard he fought just to reach this stage despite the physical toll, he has always insisted this isn't how his story at Wimbledon ends, and there is no reason to assume Friday's defeat changes that resolve. But the gap between intention and execution grows a little wider every time he runs into a version of Sinner playing this close to flawless. The serving numbers alone, dozens of first serves landing exactly where they needed to, barely a breakpoint conceded, painted the picture of a player who is not just talented, but is now operating at a level that even a fit, rested Djokovic would have struggled to solve. What this semifinal ultimately confirmed is that Sinner's ceiling at Wimbledon keeps rising while Djokovic's margin for error keeps shrinking. The heat and fatigue narrative that hovered over this match beforehand never really materialized as the deciding factor, because Sinner simply played too well for conditions or fitness questions to matter much either way. Instead, what decided this contest was a gulf in freshness, sharpness, and firepower that no amount of veteran cunning could bridge on this particular Friday. It's worth pausing on just how efficient Sinner was, because efficiency is the word that keeps surfacing when you break down this performance. He barely gave Djokovic anything to work with on return, closing out long rallies before they ever developed into the kind of grinding baseline chess matches that have historically favored the Serb's courtcraft. Every time Djokovic looked to change the pace or draw Sinner into the net, the Italian had an answer ready before the ball had even landed, the kind of composure that separates a very good player from one who is now firmly the man to beat. The atmosphere inside center court told its own story too. Every time Djokovic managed to steal a point off Sinner's serve, the roar that followed was louder than anything reserved for routine hold, a reminder that even in a lopsided scoreline, the crowd was desperate for one more twist in the tale of a man they have watched chase history for the better part of 2 decades. But desperation from the stands couldn't manufacture the break points Djokovic needed, and by the closing stages, the applause carried the tone of appreciation rather than anticipation, the sound of a crowd bracing for goodbye rather than believing in a comeback. There is also a broader storyline threading through this result that stretches beyond just one afternoon at the All England Club. Sinner has now beaten Djokovic in straight sets in back-to-back Wimbledon semifinals, a level of dominance in this specific matchup that few players have ever managed to establish against one of the most competitive figures the sport has ever produced. And yet, the rivalry itself remains far from one-sided when you zoom out across their full history, with Djokovic still capable of finding a way through on the biggest occasions, as he proved just months ago in Melbourne. That tension between a champion who refuses to fade quietly and a rising force who keeps proving he has already arrived, is exactly what makes this rivalry must-watch television every single time these two share a court. Djokovic will regroup as he always does, and the tennis world will keep watching to see whether one more chapter is still left to write at the tournament he has called his happy place for the better part of 2 decades. He leaves London again, without the trophy, but not without extending his own remarkable run of consecutive semifinal appearances here, a record that may stand for a very long time given how demanding modern tennis has become on the body. For now, though, the torch on center court has been passed again, and Sinner is 1 win away from doing something even the king of Wimbledon himself could not manage this year, lifting the trophy back-to-back and cementing his place among the sport's new generation of dominant champions.